today I am joined by Joe Freeman, who has recently created a crowdsourced map to help people who are in need of free school meals find where they are. Hi Joe, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks very much for having me.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about kind of where it all started and why I suppose in the first place?
Yeah, why indeed. So I was quietly having my lunch on Friday, just before half term, and had been following the Marcus Rashford news quite closely. I think everything that he was doing was really important. And he started the day before, I think, tweeting out the details of local businesses, essentially, who were providing free school meals for kids during half term, which is brilliant. It was getting a really, really good response. But what I noticed was that it was all well and good, except how would you be able to find what was near to you? Because these were individual bits of content out through Twitter and no one seemingly collating all that information. So I thought in an ideal world, it would be great if someone could go to somewhere and then see what was near them, essentially, so they could then find somewhere where they could go and get fed and have not go to bed hungry. So I kind of naively then scrolled through his tweets and thought I could add them to a Google map. So I spent about half an hour reading his tweets, finding the business just in maps, and then adding a little pin to it. And got about 40 or 50, I think, and then thought I'll just tweet about this. And so I retweeted some Marcus Rashford stuff and said, I've made a map here, started collating all these places for people if anyone would find it interesting. And they did. And it kind of went from there a little bit.
I mean, that initial thing that you did is something that anyone could have done. It's not like something that you didn't need developing skills or kind of a digital background to do that. I mean, maybe to know that it was possible. But once you know that you can pin things on a map in Google, you're pretty much done, and you can create like public maps as well, can't you?
Other people can contribute to as well, and there is like that awareness that is needed, that is a thing that exists, which isn't open to everyone, I think. But if you are, for example, say working in an organization, a small charity, it's not out of the realms of possibility that someone would know about that. Or I think hopefully what our talking will bring is just kind of a bit of an awareness to people that there are lots of these kind of relatively simple free things out there that people can do that can actually have a massive impact.
Totally. And that's why as soon as I saw you were doing it, I was like, I really want to get you on Buddy Chat so we can kind of highlight how simple and effective something that, and it was so needed at the time as well, and it's still serving a purpose as well because it's still growing. So tell me about what happened next, because there was someone else came on board and helped kind of automate things a bit more. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much. So I, in my naivety, was sat there manually adding each location to the map, which works, and that is a thing. But the scale at which things were taking off and the number of venues that were now participating and offering free meals for kids was huge. And I think it kind of became quite clear through a moment of panic as the retweets kind of kept racking up that there needed to be another way to do it. And quite just by chance, through me tweeting about this through my own networks, someone who I follow and follows me said, "This is great. I was thinking about doing the same thing. I've now pointed your map to a website." So it was all kidsmatter.uk, I think, at the time. So that was nice. So now there was like a destination that people could easily get to. And then someone else chipped in and said, if you need any help kind of starting to automate this, let's have a chat. So then there were three of us having these kind of conversations just through DMs on Twitter about how we can do this. So I'm aware of kind of the Google suite of things and Google Forms and how you can kind of get people to fill in data essentially, and then how you can then put that into maps. The technical way of automating all that is, I understand, but I've never done before, but this other person involved had done that. And so what came from that was her creating this form and then automating the process that every time someone filled in a form properly, it would pull that data through into the map. So that removes any manual pain from me having to read through tweets and find the right restaurants and add them to the place. Where that then I think struggled is where the next kind of challenge that we needed for that was to then make sure that people were aware that form existed. And I think the way that was going to really then take off was by the local businesses or people locally kind of knowing that the businesses near them were doing this, or the businesses themselves doing it, so that people would start to auto self-populate that data for themselves rather than having us add it to the forms.
So how did you solve that with the three of you together? Because I saw that it got like national coverage as well. Like you got onto BBC News with what you were doing.
Very scary phone. Well, it wasn't scary, but a phone call with with BBC journalists who again messaged me through Twitter. So all of this just took off through me having a social network essentially. And so I had that conversation. Man makes Google Map was quite amusing. And then that got shared a lot through Twitter. I had people just messaging me saying, "Can you add this restaurant onto your map, please?" And by that time, we had set up a website essentially that kind of signposted people towards the map and towards the form and to FareShare so they could donate, and to Marcus Rashford's tweets as well. And that started to that helped basically massively. The website was set up through card.co, so CARRD, which I think was used a lot for Black Lives Matter work. It's just a very simple one-page website, essentially, you can build. Again, it's just another one of these free things that exists. And that gave us that destination where people could go to and use. And it kind of went from there a bit.
Yeah, there's so many free things that exist now. And actually, if you know what you want to try and do, like just Googling and saying cheap or free website builder comes up with like Card and Wix and Squarespace, and there's so many of them. And actually, they're all pretty good. And in terms of like the user, like you trying to build a website, they're actually pretty intuitive as well.
Yeah.
There's no more fear, is there?
Definitely. And I think with this, there was a very clear single call to action, essentially. There was one purpose for this. And so, those free sites with literally just had 2 or 3 links on it. As long as you kind of get people there, then it's very clear that from a user perspective as to exactly what they can do or what you need them to do. So it worked perfectly. And I think organizations could probably benefit from that thinking a little bit, in the fact that just do it simply with a single call to action and it will happen. I guess there is always an element of luck. There's that social network that I have, I guess, been building up for ages, and Twitter followings, etc., and the right people in the right time and stuff. But the principles there are the same, of having just a real single call to action, a destination, and something that people can very easily contribute to. And then I think you're laughing.
And I think one of the other big learnings is, you came up with the idea and you made the first action and started pinning these manually onto a map. And then you allowed someone else in to collaborate, which is something that I think a lot of small charities and small organizations can really learn from, because a lot of the time they feel like they have to do these things on their own. When if there's a shared cause, why not join together?
Yeah, definitely. I think so. And I think that's really, really important. What's the point in lots of different people, organizations fighting for the same outcome? And I think that collaboration is really important. I think it's worth clarifying. I think I did make a map, and relatively quickly got the attention through the coverage. But so there's a group of people who are working under the Twitter of All of Us Together. And they are a larger group of people who had all been working towards that same goal. So they hadn't kind of gone out with their version of the map essentially by that point, but there were a lot of people behind the scenes working on it. And I think what there was when we kind of got in touch with each other was a recognition that I was doing something the same, but had the coverage, was getting attention. They would then also benefit from. And it made sense for me to essentially almost work with, collaborate, and then hand over to them, because there were more of them. They were arguably more experienced. They were doing a lot more interesting things and had a longer term goal as well with what they could do with this. So whereas I was very much, there's a need next week for kids to get fed, how can I help solve that? They have a much longer term kind of vision and campaigning focus essentially. So it made sense to kind of to have that collaboration really. And what we ended up doing was I shared the data that I'd put into the map and that a few others had kind of contributed to through the form, and that then fed into the map that they had. They had more people adding that data in, so it was bigger, more effective for people. And then the card site that we set up, we just changed that to point to their Google Map and to their forms. So I was just really conscious that there should be one single point of truth essentially for people. And it didn't make sense that that someone should see this or search for it and not get everything that they needed. And the effort that was going on behind the scenes with the other map essentially was going to meet that need better. So we kind of kept our side of things going, given the media attention that it had, but it really pointed to everything else that was going on behind the scenes, because that was a bigger, more solid effort essentially.
Which is a huge thing where, you know, there's so many occasions where ego gets in the way, you know, and it's like, well, I built this, I own it. And actually, you know, what is the point in duplicating efforts? And there's a big movement at the moment, especially, and we saw a lot of it at the start of lockdown 1, where you had kind of like loads and loads of people creating loads and loads of different databases of ways that they could find help and access help, and it's none of them really came together in the end. And that was actually quite a hard thing for me to watch. Like, I was constantly like I wasn't involved in any of them, so I couldn't then kind of say, you guys need to speak to each other. So it's really heartwarming to know that actually those lessons, if you saw those, were kind of taken on. And also actually it's kind of the ethos of working in kind of the digital environment in the civil society space is very much about sharing a lot more and trying to get rid of those egos. And there's a big movement of us doing that at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's super important. I mean, there would be no point in me creating something that wasn't going to serve a need for people if there was something else happening that was trying to do that also. And it was a combination of efforts and an awareness of what each other were doing that I think was really helpful. There were a few other people who had made similar maps actually, and it's interesting that I think people were messaging me saying, I've got this map, do you want the data? Here you go. And you can kind of merge the two things together, which was, again, incredibly positive to see in terms of that just collaboration. And these were people like me, essentially, who just saw that need. I guess I didn't pay much attention or have much of a look before creating my map to see if anyone else had. I scrolled through some replies to Marcus Rashford tweets to see if this thing was in existence, and I didn't see anything. So in my mind, that kind of said that there was that need, but it turns out others were. And then I think the attention that I got drew those people towards me through Twitter, and then their offer of, here's my map, do what you want with it, which again was really positive. And then I made sure all that then fed back into the bigger effort that was happening. Which was really,
when you're trying to respond to something that's got such an urgent need, you know, you're the Friday before half term, in 2 days' time, there are going to be kids that aren't going to have lunch or breakfast as well, because let's not forget that a lot of kids on free school meals are part of Breakfast Club as well. So how you've got to work quickly. You don't have the time to kind of do the due diligence research, make sure there's nothing like it out there, all of that kind of stuff. You just have to move. You know there's a problem, and actually your biggest way of testing to see if the problem is there and there is a driving force behind it is to create some kind of solution to it.
I think so. And I think there's a lesson for organizations there, I think if you're an organization, you probably need to pay attention to that due diligence bit a little bit more than I did as an individual. And I guess you're more likely to have a greater level of awareness of what's happening in that kind of sphere that you work in anyway. But yeah, the lesson of just do it, get it out there, have some confidence in it, and make sure it's meeting that really simple user need, I think is super important. During half term, I did see Marcus Rashford was asking for how many people in local areas, how many meals they'd given away on the Monday. So I think Monday evening, he did a tweet saying, just out of curiosity, how many meals did you give away? And people were again just replying to the tweet saying, I gave away 400 meals and I gave away 20. And I was like, oh no, here it is again. I wonder if anyone is starting to collate this data sensibly. And I tweeted kind of just saying, just because I'd probably learnt my lesson there, but has anyone decided to do this? And then all of us together, people had actually started to do that. So that was quite nice. That one that I didn't
actually that's the way that you prove the need for the conversation, which will come in 2-3 weeks time when we're all getting ready for the Christmas holidays. And what can you do then? I mean, at the same time, when you were building the map, my husband and I were writing emails to our local primary school and the local food bank and just saying, look, is there something that you're doing? Have you connected with the school? Are you putting a kitchen on? If so, can we volunteer? You know, we weren't thinking big. We were just thinking, let's just try and do something local. And there would have been so many other people trying to do that as well.
The outpouring from not only the restaurants and businesses and councils that were doing stuff, that outpouring was incredible. But then just the general positivity in terms of recognising what Marcus Rashford was doing, and the embarrassing tweets that included me and my name and his name in the same thing, where I just map on a lunchtime, and it all got a little bit embarrassing because I guess it was just a map. I don't see it as anything more than that really, but there was this incredible outpouring of positivity around it, and people like yourself, as you kind of exampled, wanting to help and wanting to do something. So it was positive that I guess was able to use some knowledge that I've had from work essentially to meet that need. What I'm acutely aware of though is the fact that not everyone in who needed that service, who needed those free school meals would be able to access that technology essentially, and I think there's probably some consideration that would be good to think about how using non-digital means to make sure that the people who need it most are actually able to access what is on offer, and I think that's a wider consideration and a wider issue, I guess, with digital literacy.
I suppose in this instance, it's a hope that the schools will have. I mean, I know that our local primary school wrote and hand delivered all of the letters to the pupils, and whether they were on free school meals or not, just to make sure that the parents knew what was happening. And we're in Kent, and I believe that Kent County Council decided to foot the bill. But it may be that if we're in the same situation for the Christmas holidays, they send letters home in school bags saying this is a list of all the restaurants that are local, if that's the need. Although I hope that the data that shows how many meals were given will prove the need and not suggest that businesses are able to do that again, as was alluded to by one MP in a tweet.
I think if the need is there for the public to support people, I think the work that has been done to get the All of Us Together map in place, and kind of a network of people supporting that will be able to kind of mobilize a lot quicker, and build on what is already there, and the processes in place to make sure that they're able to turn around this product service for people at a much faster pace if needed.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing that incredible story. I will add the links to the All of Us Together Twitter and the website to the YouTube, so everyone who wants to find out more and get involved can do.
Ooh, brilliant, and thank you very much for inviting me along. It's really a pleasure.
See you soon.
Thanks, bye now.
Bye.